All right. You, you all like reminding me to do this so you don't send me messages.
All right, we're on.
All right, great. All right. Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the December business meeting of the Croton-Harmon Board of Education. And recommended action that I would like to call the meeting to order, and recommended action that the Board of Education approves the agenda as presented.
I will move to approve the agenda, but this is a work session, not the business meeting.
I'm sorry, I thought I said business. I thought I said work session.
No,
I said business.
It is a work session. We're only working.
The December work session.
And I move the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries. All right, so the first thing, we are starting early. Sorry, we're starting a few minutes later than we meant to. But the first part of our meeting tonight will be a discussion of our board goal on sustainability. Tracy, if you could share that slide now, and it's just a shot of the board goal. So if everyone can see that. So just to reflect back, this is the goal, I'll read it out, that we adopted for the 2020 calendar year. The board will seek to identify and educate itself about sustainable changes, improvements, and practices that are feasible and can make a positive impact in our schools and community. This information will help the board strategize and prioritize in its planning. The board will use a variety of resources, including some of the following: mini forums, surveys, readings, and presentations from administrators, experts, other school districts, our governmental leaders, and community members to further its understanding. So tonight, in our first of these learning sessions on sustainability, we had sent some links for everyone to review. It was a podcast and then two websites. They are up on the agenda for the community to see as well. The podcast was with a member of the senior management at the Project Drawdown, and then the website, the Drawdown website, and also the Green Schools Alliance website. So in a way to get started with that, after reviewing these materials, I think what we wanted to start off was just sort of see where everyone was in terms of their knowledge base and their comfortability, their comfort level with where the school district is, and just in general what their understanding is of sustainability and sustainable measures. So if anyone has any thoughts or reflections after reviewing those materials, either the materials in general or how they relate to the district, please take it away. Oh, not everyone at once. Yeah. Andrea, I think I'm going to call on you to go first.
I'll go.
I was on mute.
Yeah, because one of the things I found really interesting one thing I really like about the Green School Alliance is that it provides a roadmap that's very specific and concrete about how to get from one place to another. So I think it's a really helpful tool. It's had trouble getting off the ground, but I think more and more schools are looking for it so that, hopefully we will be moving forward with it this year. I think we originally signed up for it about 2 years ago. But the one thing I really was kind of an eye-opener to me looking at listening to the Project Drawdown audio podcast was this idea that actually individuals can do something, but they can't do that much. We really have to work as systems. We can make the biggest impact as systems. So even working as like a Croton school is helpful, but if we could work with other school districts, if we could work with all the school districts in New York State, work with other, states, we can probably really make a difference, like a more impactful difference. So it's great looking at the on the ground, the very particular steps that an individual can take. But then I also think we really, we can start maybe opening up our discussions and our view as to how to do bigger advocacy and starting to build alliances with hopefully other districts. That would be like the perfect place to start, I think.
Neil?
Yeah, picking up on what Andrea said and thinking about the podcast, which I listened to, and then thinking about the Green School Alliance, there are a number of different messages, and this relates and with different audiences and different effects. But this relates very much to what I think we've been talking about in terms of diversity and inclusion, right? You have certain components of addressing those issues, which are individual in nature. How does one person, student, faculty member, staff member, interact with another in a way that is respectful and inclusive and recognizes diversity? And then there is the systemic component. For a school system, because the podcast didn't focus on schools and didn't focus basically on anything, it was a general overview. School systems have a number of roles. One is educational, curricular. How do we infuse the support for sustainability into curriculum? How do we infuse it into co-curricular activities? How do we infuse it into our programs internally and our procedures internally? And as Andrea says, how do we deal with things systemically in our district and systemically elsewhere? So I really think that as we go through this, we've got to look at the different buckets, if that's the right word, and say, what can we do? And because I think there will be different people within our community, and I mean school community or wider community, who will be interested in focusing in different things. Some will be interested in focusing on recycling and composting and making that a very individual action, and some will be concerned with more systemic things. And I think we need to figure out a process for utilizing everybody's efforts in everybody's area of interest. And that's very similar to what we will be talking about in diversity and inclusion. So that's kind of what I got out of what we have looked at for today.
So one thing that came up for me was, I sort of took it in a slightly different way, is that we have there's established practice in organizations that do things a particular way, and we tend not to think about the fact that we're doing things in a particular way. And that exists both in the small with us as individuals, and in schools, and in whole school districts, and in whole municipalities, and in society as a whole. But and I think that one of the things that's important that I sort of took from this is it's important to pay attention to those processes and to stop and look at each and every one of them and say, hey, how does this impact our sustainability? And that might mean making changes that otherwise, we would never consider doing, simply because we never thought of it and there was no real reason to do it. So for instance, and I'm just throwing this out, it's not a proposal, but like what one might wonder, what would the impact on total carbon emissions be of changing the limit of how close to the school is the limit before the bus picks you up? So right now, Neil, I'm sure Neil remembers off the top of his head what the range is.
Sure. It's 3/10 of a mile for CET and 9/10 of a mile for the middle school and high school.
Right. So if we were to change those numbers, what would the impact be on total carbon emissions? It's something that we might want to, just as that's an example of something that we might think about. And, sort of these changes that might seem on the surface not to be directly related to it, but have knock-on effects, because if we change that closer, that might mean fewer parents driving their kids to school. If there's fewer parents driving their kids to school, that means there's fewer vehicles out on the road and driving up to PVC and the high school and so on in the morning. So.
Hey, Josh, you mentioned a question I thought was really good, and I didn't capture it all. When you said, looking at our processes, how does this, and then something, our sustainability? Do you remember what you said?
How does our standard operating procedure impact our sustainability? I think is what I was saying. I don't think I used those words, though. I don't remember.
Okay, I'll watch the videotape.
I think it's recorded, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my main point was that, we have a lot of things that we do as just a regular course of business without thinking about it. Just because we've always done it that way, or it was the most convenient way to do it. It made sense at the time we decided, but when we made the decision to do it that way, we didn't have sustainability as part of as a criteria. Now we do.
I think that's a great idea. I also wondered about what are the obvious low-hanging fruit types of things, right? Things that don't require our staff to go study something, because they're pretty much overwhelmed as it is. They can't, like, I don't know who has time to find out all this important information, and we should find it out, but what can be done immediately that's obvious. And some of what Josh said, like processes, things that we do, do we print something 4 million times and then store it in 4 million cabinets? Like lots and lots of little things add up to big things. And I think as it relates to sort of the bigger picture of how do we teach this, in some ways we teach it by doing it, and not necessarily, or not only by having programs that we can have the kids sit in and listen, because they probably know more than we do anyway about this. This is they basically, my kids blame me for the environmental problems. They say that I should be fixing them, but they of course know better how to do it, and that's probably, they're probably right. They're probably right. And so our behaviors are, they're inherently sort of old-fashioned because, well, we're not 20. So I think that there are some things that are probably obvious that we can do as a district, and then maybe we just look to the students, the young people who actually probably have studied this and have thought about this and have discussed it way more than we have. So I think getting them involved almost on a peer level, as opposed to like, we're teaching you.
Sarah, I just wanted to chime in on two
Yeah.
things. One, connecting to what Andrea said earlier, with the bus electrification task force, which has a direct link to your sustainability goals as well as our district goal. We have invited other districts to join us in this discussion and journey, because I think you said something that certainly resonated with us, that why go through this exploration when others would benefit from our work as well. So I think that was, really very important to us to at least offer for anyone that was interested. I think the other thing, what resonated with me with the podcast with Crystal and the interview that I guess it was Michael, someone who did with her, was, I don't know if when you were listening to her beginning, because the notes that I took in her beginning of the interview reminded me so of the Croton-Harmon profile of the graduate, because he started off talking about the ways in which she became in part of environmental science and when that happened. And she said it really wasn't a specific moment. One, it was her own discovery and love for being with nature. But what did she learn as she went on was what resonated with me. She said, I learned to work as a team, to listen to broad points of view, to learn about the good of the whole, even though I'm being hit with all of these individual pressures. I've learned to be resilient. And it is the combination of these experiences which led her to draw the drawdown framework. And I just kept saying, oh my God, that is so powerful, because our children never know where they're going to land and what route or journey they're going to take to get there. But what are those essential skills which would make them open to other points of view, learning something new, feeling free to experience nature, and then what it has to offer. And then the other thing that really resonated with me is a word we use often, is the solutions path. Drawdown really focuses on the solutions, maybe not getting so bogged down in the metrics of measuring factors, but that whole piece that she explained on the meta-analysis of the solutions. So though I thought you picked some really powerful resources, because I wonder sometimes if we get so bogged down with the specifics that we lose sight of the big picture, or maybe become paralyzed with being able to move forward. And so those were the things that resonated with me. And I thank you for the resources you picked for this discussion.
The thanks should go to Andrea, because she actually had joined. Andrea was part of the sustainability committee last year, and I think the year before that. And the committee itself had looked at some of the drawdown framework in previous meetings, and of course the Green Schools Alliance. So that is where we drew that from. And I agree. I think there were some great resources in sort of giving everyone a good sort of foundation of I guess what it is, what we're talking about, what people are talking about when they're talking about sustainability, and what some of the issues are, and some of the solutions can be. So I think that was they were very good. Andrea, did you want to pop in?
I just wanted to add something to kind of what Josh was saying, because one thing I think, well, going back to what Dr. O'Connell was saying, drawdown does offer hope. And what they talk about is there's two ways to deal with the problem. One is removing gases, greenhouse gases, and the other is taking steps not to add more. So we've already been working on some of these things. Like right now, I know Brian's on sustainability committee, and they're doing this whole landscaping thing. That's a really powerful way to absorb, or what is the word they use? Sink in greenhouse gases.
Carbon sink, yeah.
Yeah, carbon sink. And it's a really big thing. And then another way that we are helping to cut back on emissions is a very powerful way, according to Drawdown, is through our food waste program. And it was very exciting, Brian, when you were talking about how we can weave in education. That was like a really powerful opportunity. And we worked very closely with the Greenberg Center to weave in education. And I think the kids really took a lot from that. So that, I think personally, that's a great model that hopefully we can use when things sort of settle down a bit and we can try some new initiatives.
Andrea, I would love to just add some further connection with that first initiative you're talking about from the environmental sustainability, because, I thought of it right away when Josh was talking about the standard operating procedures, because something like mowing the lawn is exactly that type of a thing, where, you do it because the lawn is there, and you continue to take that power mower and you continue to cut it and It was so nice to have a district environmental sustainability with members that take a look at just a simple practice like that and challenge it and say, what if? And the what if becomes, what if we designate areas, we stop mowing them, encourage the growth of indigenous species, whether they be berries, whether they be pollinators. And then, going to what Brian was saying, then all of a sudden the committee stopped and said, well, we have the expertise to draw up these plans and say, here's a great area, here's the sunlight for this plant, here's the drainage where it would be a good, good drainage garden for, and then they said, stop, because you know what? We're an educational system. And we've got students and they're studying AP environmental. And, wouldn't it be an exciting project to give the schematics to CET and present it to students with this situation, some compelling, what could we do environmentally to, consider drain off of rainwater, to consider, reducing the mowing, to increase pollination on our grounds, to increase the, growth of native species, and have them design what the solution could be, which is, exactly where we should be going with this in my mind.
Thank you for that update on what's going on in the district right now. I think all of those things are really exciting to hear. And I think one thing that I was thinking about when Brian was talking about what's the low-hanging fruit, I think when we get this energy audit back for our energy performance contract, I think that's also another place that's going to show us where some of that low-hanging fruit is, where some of those things going on in a building level that are relatively easy changes that will have impact that added up. Well, they might be small things here and there, but added up all together can really increase our impact as a district. So I think that in concert with the bus electrification task force, with the work that's going on with the sustainability committee, I think bringing all of those things together will be important in showing, in really making an impact as a district. And then from there, to Andrea's point, being able to go out and speak to other school districts, advocate at the state level, see what we can do to really, launch a bigger impact.
And I know we have to wrap up because we're at our 30-minute time to start the meeting. I just will add like a one sentence of, I actually thought these were really good materials to start looking at. I thought the Drawdown podcast did a really good job because it was focused on the solutions and looking at focusing your energy on what can you do, like the whole complex of the issues surrounding whether it's global warming, how does greenhouse gases impact. Let's just look at what can we do, knowing how the process works. And a lot of the big ticket item things were, food waste. And it was good to hear, like that ranks high up there. And that's something as a school district we can make changes in. So I agree with everything that's been said tonight. I think it has opened my eyes in terms of when we're making a decision to look at, that's why I wanted to capture Josh's question, because it's really on every decision, looking at it through the lens of how does this affect or impact the earth going forward? And is it a positive or a negative? And if it's a negative, are there alternatives? Let's figure those out. So I kind of like that balance.
Thank you. Andrea?
Sorry, I know we're just at the end, but to sort of go with this sort of the positivity of, it's not only what we can do, but one thing I really liked about Crystal was she talked about there are tremendous benefits that come out of taking these steps. So if we're really talking on, if we really focus on the health and wellness of ourselves, of our children, of our community, then you really can maybe take that extra step. And that's rather than always look at it from the loss perspective. I was really energized by her positive message on that front.
I agree. All right.
Sarah,
Does anyone
if I
else have any other comments? Denise?
Yeah, if I could just jump
Yeah.
in. So just a few things we do as a district, regularly reminding people to turn off their monitors and their systems. We have now centralized printing so that everyone doesn't have a handy printer next to them and to generate documents. And we're really pushing for electronic document storage. But another exciting thing that's coming up, so as a part of our EPC, we have a curriculum enhancement and student engagement piece that we will be meeting with our energy ECG, and also Honeywell, who we've chosen to work on our comprehensive energy audit, and they're almost in the completion stage of that. But we are going to be meeting to develop the curriculum very soon. So John, I don't know if you know yet, but you have a meeting on your calendar for early January. And eventually we're going to meet just to brainstorm a little bit, and then we'll bring in Student Faculty Congress and our students, because we know they move a lot faster than we do. They can really push things along and also motivate us. And so that's an exciting thing that's coming up.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. Well, if that is it, we will conclude this session's learning session. I believe next meeting we will be doing, are we doing sustainability again? I think we are. So yeah. So
Yes, because the EPC comes up in, I think, the meeting after that. So yeah.
oh, you're right. Yeah. So I think we have something else in between, and then at the next, probably the next work session, we'll be able to maybe see the results of the EPC audit. So we'll go from there. But thank you, everyone, for signing on a little early and joining in this discussion. I think this was very helpful. So we will now move into the rest of the meeting. All right, so now we will move into the superintendent's report. So I will turn it over to Dr. O'Connell to give us her superintendent's report.
Well, thank you very much. Not a formal report, just again that as we ended last week and started this week, we did have more cases, COVID positive cases, than we have had as a whole. Not over the long period of time, but as a whole, predominantly at the high school and the middle school. So again, we're watching very, very closely our Croton-Harmon positivity rate. We continue to monitor the information about zones. The 3 zones we speak of are what the governor is calling microcluster. His microcluster strategy on yellow zone, orange zone, and red zone. And the governor has been very specific in terms of speaking about hospitalization rates and including that metric in how a zone is designated. So as a school district, we will continue to monitor the 3 zones, and of course, listen very carefully to the governor should we be placed in a designated zone. Over time, as you know, we have communicated as a district numerous times to our community to speak about the zones. Over time, the governor has changed the metric. So that's a really important piece. So we have to make sure that we're looking at up to the minute description of what makes for a microcluster. And then if we are designated in a microcluster, what in essence would our responsibility for testing be? So as a district, we did send out the consent form to our families. Again, not that we're in a zone, but we want to prepare. So once we are designated in a zone, at whatever time that is, We will then, of course, review the criteria of that zone to make sure we have the up to the minute description of the zone and what the requirements are. And then, we'll make any necessary changes. We've been planning here as a district. However, we won't review our plans with the Department of Health until we are designated in a zone. So they ask that we wait, to actually review it, which I can certainly understand. I'm sure they're very overwhelmed with what they need to be doing. And so we have been planning here. John Griffiths, thank you, and our COVID coordinators, as well as our nursing health team, have been meeting regularly and planning. And again, once we're in a zone, we'll then review those plans with the Department of Health and actually put those in motion. As we've also communicated, we are remote tomorrow, full regular remote program tomorrow, as well as Monday and Tuesday. And then that will bring us into the break. I often get the question more verbally than in writing. What are we doing when we come back? We are slated to come back. I believe it's January 4th, and we are slated to come back January 4th. Our team will continue to be monitoring things over the holiday break. Of course, if there should anything change, we would communicate. But right now we are planning on resuming our normal schedule for January 4th. That concludes my report. I just really wanted to summarize some things we've been saying continuously, trying not to miss an opportunity to reiterate some of these important points. And maybe I should have said almost finally, because finally is the piece on traveling. There are very, very specific guidelines that the governor has laid out if you are traveling that require testing and shortened quarantine periods. Again, this is a community effort. We all must be doing our part. We just talked about that with sustainability, and here I'm repeating it again. So you must follow the travel advisory guidelines as put forth by the governor before anyone can return to school on January 4th. So we ask that everybody review them very closely and follow suit so that we can keep as many in-person days as possible in the new year. So that concludes I think that really concludes it now.
Thank you very much, Dr. O'Connell. All right, so with that, we will now move into instructional personnel. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the extended instructional personnel appointment of Angela Williams as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All right, on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries. All right, 3.2, recommended action. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Croton-Harmon Union Free School District hereby accepts the resignation of Deborah August, Director of Technology, for the purpose of retirement, effective June 30, 2021.
So moved.
Neil, are
I'm
you
moving.
seconding?
All right, I'm seconding. Yeah.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 And
Thank
we
you,
will-
Iris.
we will have more to say about Deborah's departure at some point later. because it will
Absolutely.
be, she's been invaluable, and we will miss her, but we
Very
promise
much
that we will.
so. And we thank her very much for her service to the district. She's been with us, I believe, since 2009, right? All right. Opposed, abstain, motion carries. All right. So now we will move into the consent agenda. So recommended action that the Board of Education approves all items in the consent agenda. Iris moved it. Neil, are you seconding? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, abstain? I'm sorry, Neil, on the question?
No, I just said, you didn't ask on the question.
I
don't
didn't,
have
I
anything.
know.
I just want to make sure that nobody has anything to say, but
Does any questions?
I'm in favor of the motion.
All right. Let me do that again. All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose, abstain, motion carries. All right. Thank you very much. So now we will be heading into executive session, and we do expect that we will adjourn the meeting at the completion of executive session. So to any community members who are joining us on the live stream, we will be leaving that now. And thank you very much for joining in, and we hope you can tune in for our January business meeting. But with that, I will recommended action that the Board of Education enters into executive session to discuss the employment of a particular person or persons.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, abstain, motion carries.